Welcome into the nightcap brought to you by Hail Marys in Cheviot. Everything new at Hail Marys, the TVs, the speakers, the appliances, the toilets, the draft systems, the walk-in cooler, everything is new. They have 27 TVs, 3 outside, and a 9-screen video wall. Not a bad seat in the house. And of course, they subscribe to every sports package that DirecTV offers so they can stream all games. Cincinnati sports, always on the big video wall. They're located on the main drag through Cheviot on Harrison Avenue and are within the Dora district, so you can walk bar to bar with your drinks. They don't have a kitchen, but they do offer various food trucks on the weekend and randomly throughout the week. They have a ton of non-alcoholic options, an entire cooler full. The walk-in cooler, again, brand new. Draft line's brand new. The glycol system cooling the draft lines is brand new. Not only do they pour the coldest beer around, but they have the 32.8 degree frosted glasses. Check out Hail Marys and support the people who support us. But Chad is out. He is at SZA and Kendrick Lamar. So in we have Keegan Nickerson. And he is coming off dropping the look at the safeties room. This is the second room, I believe, that you've taken a deep dive on. First was, of course, the quarterbacks. We did a show about the quarterbacks. The third, you've done 3 now?
Tight ends. I did tight ends first.
All right. Well, then we're going to we still have to do a tight end show. So very good. So that gives it like fodder for another show when there's nothing going on. So we are one behind, but you just dropped the safeties. So while you're here and it's fresh, we've had over 24 hours to check out the article. But if you're looking for more information than what you get here, be sure to check out that article on bearcatjournal.com. But the safety room is largely revamped. I think there's 4 names from last season that are in that room out of the 7 or so guys in that room. So what's your quick 40,000 foot view on the safety room as a whole?
Yeah, I think it's fitting puzzle pieces together that they were kind of trying to smush together last season. I was told that 7 of the safeties on this year's roster can play 2 of the 3 spots. And I think they had 1 that could play multiple last year, which is Derek Canteen, and his ability to play both boundary and field. It's that just allows for so much more flexibility, especially when you get to the end of the season and guys are banged up. And you can bring in a guy like an Antoine Peak or a Jaquan Sanks or a Trayvon Gala-Collard who played a decent amount last year, but now can play a huge role late in the season at kind of providing depth. The 3 big names that they added, Xavier Williams, Christian Harrison, and Taden Barnes, I think there's a decent chance that could be your 1, 2, and 3 in terms of field boundary and star come week 1 against Nebraska. Harrison is probably the most intriguing in that he can really play all 3 safety positions. He can go out to corner if he needs to, and he can also play Sam linebacker. So he could really be a Swiss Army knife and one of the more important players. And then Xavier Williams leading Middle Tennessee State in tackles last year, despite playing just 9 games on defense, can kind of tell you about his potential and where he can be with a full season under a good defensive coordinator and a scheme that kind of complements his style of play.
Now, last season, we did see flashes from the 4 guys that are coming back in that room before we get to the new guys in a deeper look. Trayvon Gala-Collard, he had some massive plays, especially down the stretch as he saw more time towards the end of the season. It seemed like he was in the right spot more often than not. Antoine Peak, he's known for his ball punch, but he's also had some great plays as a Bearcat. In stepping into the shadow of his father, who had a massive career here. Jaquan Sanks was a true freshman last year who got some starting time, got some definitely got some playing time. Going to be curious to see how he evolves in his sophomore season. And Marcavius Sabor, he did a lot on special teams, I feel like, if I'm not mistaken, more so than maybe on the field in the safety role. But again, just another guy who you wonder what that sophomore season looks like.
Yeah, Sabor is the guy that when I talk to some people about the safety room, it's kind of like, hey, don't forget about this kid. Like, this kid is going to be really good. And he was probably hands down the best special teams player as a true freshman last year in terms of just constantly being active, constantly being involved in big plays. One of the few highlights of special teams last year, especially on punt and kick return coverage. He suffered a quad injury early in spring that kind of caused him to miss the rest of spring practice. He's expected to be back by fall camp. So he's in line to be ready to go for week 1 against Nebraska. I think when you bring in those guys like Williams, Barnes, and Harrison, they almost kind of over-recruited the safety position, but they put themselves in the spot to move Logan Wilson and Kai Stokes to corner. So in a way, last year, they didn't really have enough, and they didn't really have enough to put people where they needed to play to benefit the team. It was kind of the only thing that they could do. Now they have so many pieces, you can do what's best for the player and also what's best for the team. And what's best for the team is bringing in those guys and also moving Logan Wilson and Kai Stokes to corner. So I think it's going to be one of the more important groups. It could also be one of the better groups on defense. Everyone's obviously going to point to the linebackers, the amount of depth that they have and the amount of returners that they have. But I think the highlight of the 3-3-5 system is those 3 deep defensive backs, and they can really make a huge difference more than what a lot of people think.
Now, Christian Harrison, the low-hanging fruit on him is, of course, the fact that he is the son of an NFL legend in his own right, Super Bowl winner, and a guy who became a household name because of just how hard he hit. And he comes by way of Tennessee. He mentioned when he got here that he was excited about the fact that he did have versatility at Cincinnati that he didn't get at Tennessee, and can play multiple positions and expand his growth. I guess that's probably exactly what's happening.
Yeah, I think he's going to be able to play a lot of different spots back there. And I think that was probably one of the bigger selling points that UC relayed to him and recruiting him, because there wasn't a ton of connections getting him here. Like a lot of people think, well, there's a coach that used to coach on Tennessee or a former GA or a relationship with an agent. It was it was an old fashioned recruitment battle, and that they kind of just beat out the other teams that were coming after him. Now, I've been told that Darrell Sims actually did help a little bit and kind of just say, hey, UC is a good spot. Like that's a good coaching staff. Darrell Sims, the former running backs coach at UC, who's now at Tennessee after the 2023 season, he went there. Yeah. So they had a little bit of an edge there, but they basically just sold their plan and he jumped on it. And I think that that's going to be on the field as much as possible, and also be playing all the positions that can put UC and Harrison in the best spot to have success.
Now, why is he standing out as kind of head and shoulders above maybe everybody else?
I mean, I think the easy thing is he was a consistent contributor on an SEC defense, and you don't get to see that a lot for UC and getting transfers like that. A defense that was able to play in the college football playoff. So I think when you have the aura of that, he makes it a little bit more interesting than as David Williams, who comes from Middle Tennessee State, or a Tatum Barnes, who comes from New Mexico State, because everyone sees that orange tee and gets really, really intrigued. But I think he probably wouldn't tell you, because I don't know if he loves the whole "my dad was an NFL player" storyline. I remember I saw him he replied to one of Dan Horde's tweets, and Dan said, son of Rodney Harrison. And then he said, asterisk, Christian Harrison. Like he's the same. My name's Christian Harrison. I'm not Rodney Harrison's son, kind of thing. But we've seen it with Jizzle James. There's a level of professionalism that those kids have and just how they go about their business and how they develop their game. And I think that that's kind of naturally just spilling into the preparation and spring practice. And his teammates, as Dante Corleone has brought him up multiple times, I'm pretty sure even Sorsby brought him up at one of the Ball and Brew events. His teammates see that. They see how he was prepared at Tennessee and the high pressure stakes that were there. So it's kind of just bleeding over to UC now.
That's so reminiscent of Jerome Ford. And like, I'm not the Alabama transfer. I'm a Bearcats running back. Like, it just reminds me of that situation all over again. And that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that he wants to set his own path and not be in the shadow of his father there. Xavier Williams, though, what a story about him having been a quarterback at UCF, and now then he goes to Middle Tennessee, and he's the safety there after coming in initially as a quarterback and then switching over to safety there. And now he comes here as a safety, so he'll get to play UCF. But to go from quarterback to now looking at potentially a starting job as a safety in the Big 12, that's quite the turnaround.
Yeah. I don't think he has I think he's coming into this with, I don't have a lot to lose. Like it's his last year.
House money.
Had a lot of success. He had a lot of success at this position. He can just come in and play his game and play how he wants to play and see if it works. I think the interesting thing that when I was writing this article was comparing him to Jaquan Sanks, and Sanks 6 foot 185 and Xavier Williams is 6'3", 210. So, and you'll see it like when you come out to Higher Ground or a fall camp or wherever, and you might've seen it even at the spring game, this dude is lanky. And he's someone I'm super, super excited to watch and just to be able to see his impact, because I think when you pair how he plays in terms of getting downhill and tackling with the length that he has and pass coverage, I think it's kind of the best of both worlds between a Jaquan Sanks and an Antoine Peak. So that's why I'm really high on him as possibly being that week 1 starter against Nebraska, when the star spot was the only safety spot returning 2 players who started multiple games for UC last year, and Jaquan Sanks and Antoine Peak.
And then lastly, Taden Barnes. And during the spring game, I can't recall if it was Lichty or Sorsby. I want to say it was Lichty that
Lichty.
He stepped in and picked off an errant pass over the middle. Just read it and jumped all over it. Wasn't like an accident or anything like that. He definitely just jumped the route. But Taden Barnes, another interesting story as kind of an afterthought guy coming in from New Mexico State. Not necessarily somebody that a ton of teams had a big radar on, but he's been making plays ever since he's gotten here and making a name for himself already here in Cincinnati.
I had to ask Coach Veit if he was clear on you're not supposed to kick the ball after you get an interception. Because I remember like when he committed, when you search his name on Twitter, like that's what I do. I try to look for highlights, and I know Brent does a great job of that after UC gets a commit. The first thing that comes up is his team was down 30 points. He gets an interception and then kicks the ball into the stands and gets a 15-yard penalty. Veit was like, yeah, he likes to have fun. He's a passionate player. But yeah, we let him know that we want to try to celebrate with the team, not just by ourselves.
Well, then he did the same thing during the spring game, right?
I think he did.
After his interception, I think he took it and kicked it.
Yeah.
Look, I don't care. If you're down 30 and doing that, yeah, that's probably not a great look. But if you're winning, you can kind of get away with a lot more. Just ask the the Pace Boys. Just saying. But yeah, you can do some things like that. So I don't know. I'm excited to see what he brings.
Yeah,
An edge.
Yeah, he's an undersized guy, really stocky, really thick guy. And I think I'm trying to look at it here, whether he was going to play fight or whether he was going to play boundary or field. He's more of a field guy, so I would look for him and Trayvon Gallagher to compete for the field safety spot. And then I think depending on what happens there, that could kind of flesh out what does Xavier Williams do? Does he switch to a field spot? And then does Jaquan Sank start at star? How does it impact Marquavius Sabor? So I think that third safety spot between Barnes and Gallagher could have more implications on the rest of the safeties when that competition goes on during fall camp.
Well, it's certainly an intriguing spot, especially with the fact that it is a 3 safety defense. And I expect to see probably quite a few more wrinkles this season than last season, especially as you bring in guys who have higher defensive IQs and can kind of do some different things. Having been in the system for a year, you're only bringing in 3 new guys to this particular group, and maybe you can continue to develop what you started with the basis of last year and kind of mature that defense this season into doing some different things, some exotic looks, some blitz looks that maybe you weren't able to pull off last season, given whether it was just personnel or just time in the system. You saw some of that towards the end of the system, or I'm sorry, in the end of the season. But I think that this could be a very intriguing group overall, just based on you upgraded both physically and mentally, it seems.
Yeah, and I think one of the bigger things that could impact the safeties is the defensive front, and actually having Dante Corleone, Micah Coleman, and Jalen Wright McLean up there, and then kind of backed up by CJ McCray, Jalen Hunt, and those guys. How much pressure they're able to get on the quarterback, because as we saw last year, pressure was few and far between, and if there was pressure, it was usually by a linebacker on a blitz. So if UC's best defensive lineman can stay healthy, the interception numbers might go up a little bit if you force those quarterbacks to make some bad decisions.
Well, we're looking for some takeaways this season, not turnovers, takeaways. That's what we're calling them. So we got to make sure that they get this going right, and I'm excited to see what this room brings this season.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, again, you can check out his article on BearcatJournal.com. Thanks to Keegan Nickerson, though, for filling in for Chad tonight, as he is at his little Kendrick Lamar SZA concert floor seats. I can't even wrap my mind around any of this. I don't know how they're going to be able to see anything, because collectively I think they have a height of 8 feet. But that's going to wrap it up. We'll be back tomorrow night with another nightcap talking about who knows what. But thanks to Hail Marys for sponsoring this little show. And again, check out Keegan's work on BearcatJournal.com.